Well, folks, just another chill Thursday on the home front. Nothing that important happened. Not at all. Kevin Durant requested a trade,
Yeah.
but that's not even scratching the surface, guys. Not even scratching the surface. Because I guess in the year of our Lord 2022, USC and UCLA are intending on joining the Big Ten. We're going to start with that a little bit and then really dive into Indiana's loaded non-conference slate with those four heavyweight matchups. And now that they've all been announced, yes, the Arizona one not official yet, but for all intents and purposes, it's on the schedule. We're going to discuss all of that and so much more here on the exciting, unbelievable, astounding edition, the 255th episode of the Hoosiers Sound. We're the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We're recording tonight on Wednesday, June 29, 2022. I'm your host, Nithin Christian. Here with me tonight is my normal co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, you just woke up to a deluge of crazy news. I mean, what's going on here? How is the Big Ten supposed to have USC and UCLA in 2 years?
Yeah, so for those you don't know, I live in Japan. So it's 7:15 in the morning here, which means when the news broke about the USC UCLA deal, it was like 1 in the morning. I was asleep because I was planning on going into work today. The key word there is planning. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that at this point now. I'm so confused, perturbed, one might say. No, but yeah, so I woke up and I thought it was a joke for my friend, and then I went on Twitter and then I realized it was not a joke. I haven't even gotten to the NBA stuff yet that happened. I got to catch up on that. But oh my goodness. Yeah, I think genuinely I think what we're going to be looking at here, it's July 1st for me, the 30th for the rest of you, June.
Yeah.
I think by the end of the summer, we're going to have maybe 3 big conferences left standing.
Right.
Like the ACC is going to be in shambles, I think, come the end of the summer, especially with some of the reports that Notre Dame is now on the move. You look at USC, UCLA leaving, which means other Pac-12 teams are now going to be scrambling for a new conference because they just lost the LA market. So Stanford, Oregon, Washington, Arizona State, those schools are going to be up for the highest bidder. Colorado as well. It's just going to be a weird time in collegiate athletics because not only are schools going to be looking at which deals they're going to take that will make the schools the most money, but if they're smart, they're also going to be looking at which conference can help bring in their students more NIL deals. So for instance, the Big Ten now has a step over the SEC. Sure, the SEC got Texas and Oklahoma, good for them. But now literally the Big Ten has the New York, the California, and the Chicago markets. Okay. So when you're talking about getting your face on national television, that's great. But getting your face on local television and local news in the California, LA, the Chicago, Illinois market, and then the New York market for Rutgers. And if you get, another team like Duke or UNC, still the New York market, all of a sudden your NIL stuff for your athletes has to go up a couple zeros because now that you're worth more, your face is worth more. You have more of a reach. People follow you. People know you. There's name, image, and likeness identification from normal people out and about. It's not that everybody in LA follows collegiate athletics, but if you do follow collegiate athletics and you follow and you're a fan of UCLA basketball and you see Trace Jackson Davis's face after you've played him twice and you've lost him twice, there is a bit of an identification there. So Big Ten has now positioned themselves very well to be one of the 2 remaining conferences left. Now, is it, I forget the 80s movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's where everything, it's Escape from New York. That's the name.
Okay.
So it's Escape from New York. And what happens is he wakes up from a coma, I believe. And he's like a cop. And he wakes up and basically the corporations had a war and they all fought to the death. And the only restaurant left standing was Taco Bell. So every restaurant was named Taco Bell, no matter what kind of restaurant it was. So like the fancy restaurant, the fast food restaurant, the pizza joint, they're all Taco Bell. So I have a feeling that this is what's happening to college sports athletics, is that the war has now begun. The corporations have started battling each other, and it's a fight between the Big Ten and the SEC to see who is going to be the last standing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you can almost argue that it started, the war started, or I guess resumed when Texas and Oklahoma decided they were going to head off to the SEC. And this is seemingly the Big Ten's response to that. To offer the starting point here, college sports reporter John Wilner, based out of the Mercury News in San Jose, tweeted it pretty straightforward. It was, source. USC and UCLA are planning to leave for the Big Ten as early as 2024. The move has not been finalized at the highest levels of power, but it's kind of finalized. If you hear some follow-up reports from Nicole Auerbach and Pete Thamel, you definitely see that there's definitely something happening in the works here. In this year, in this moment, it's stunning that there were no rumblings of this before the sort of bombshell report from John Wilner. And now all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, well, this is weird. This is strange. USC and UCLA into the Big Ten. I mean, look, it's showtime. Let's do this, folks. I mean, sea to shining sea, East Coast to West Coast. It was a little awkward when Rutgers and Maryland and Nebraska came into the league. It was a little awkward when Penn State came into this league, and when they did. It's going to be just fine. USC and UCLA will merge in perfectly. I don't know what's going to happen with divisions. You saw some football conferences take those out. I believe the ACC ditched divisions recently in football, but it's crazy. George Kliavkoff is the Pac-12 commissioner about a year to the date since he's been hired, and he clearly has noticed that the Pac-12, as it currently stands, ain't it. The Pac-12 has missed the college football playoff 6 out of 8 times. Even in college basketball, it's been difficult. The Olympic sports are really what carries that conference as far as a performance standpoint. But the news from Ryan Karchi was that it's going to include Olympic sports too, with the exception of beach volleyball. So you can really see that this is a serious, big time move. I absolutely love it. I can't wait to see a beautiful October Big Ten football game between Indiana and UCLA at the Rose Bowl, or Indiana and USC at the Coliseum. Sign me up for that. A lot of other comments here from John Wilner include the fact that, UCLA, for example, has a lot of debt issues right now coming out of the pandemic, a lot of problems as far as the financial viability of the Pac-12. USC and UCLA media rights could be something like $100 million annually. And Big Ten, yeah, you better believe they're going to sign up for that. Interesting to wrap up, though, Wilner said, if he's the Big Ten and he wants to expand even further, some of the interesting candidates would be Washington, Oregon, North Carolina, Duke, and even Mizzou, who just went to the SEC. I don't know how much bigger the Big Ten can get, but frankly, sign me up for all of it.
I agree. And then also, I'm just so like, it's so confusing that, like, I remember playing the NCAA video games and like moving teams. Like I was so triggered when people moved the conferences and made bigger conferences. So I was like, that was not realistic. That would never happen. USC would never join the Big Ten. That doesn't make any sense. And now we're sitting here talking about it. So I mean, good for the Big Ten, obviously. The Pac-12 fans have to be heated right now because, well,
But who's really a fan of the Pac-12, like as a conference, right? Really, it's nobody, except if you're hired by the offices of the Pac-12. If you're a USC fan or UCLA fan, this is a win for your fan base and for your programs.
I'm worried if I'm a Utah fan. I'm worried if I'm an Arizona fan, right? I'm absolutely.
I think this gives you more opportunity in that league, and you can explore your options now.
No, because as a Big Ten member, right, we're feeling happy because our conference is winning. But if our conference was losing, there would definitely be some thoughts in our mind of, are we moving to the American? Right? Are we promoting down a division here? Like, is this what's happening? Because I don't see all these teams getting spots into conferences, right? So all of a sudden, you're going to be picking off the top of the ACC and the Pac-12 if you're the SEC and the Big Ten, and all of a sudden there's some teams that are going to be left out, right? Some teams that should be Power 5 that aren't. Oregon State, I'm looking at them. They're lucky to be a Power 5 school with the way they perform. I would say Rutgers and Purdue and Northwestern right now are also very lucky to be Power 5 conference schools with the way their athletics performs. But they just happen to be in the correct conference, whereas Oregon State, Washington State, Colorado, those teams, Utah, these teams are smaller and they're now in a smaller conference. So what's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to the Mountain West? What's going to happen to the Big East? Where are these teams moving? How are they repositioning themselves? So are we changing the name of the conferences? Are we moving to the big, just get rid of the 10, right? The big conference.
Well, you can kind of do it like the what you have in the pros, right? You could just do the Southeastern Conference, I guess. Well, that doesn't work. You can do a North, a South, and East, and a West, or just give them numbers, right? Conference 1, 2, 3, and 4, or A, B, C, D. And just call it like it is, because the Big Ten does not have 10 teams. The Big 12 does not have 12 teams. And so if you felt like changing those, you definitely could. As far as I'm concerned, some of those other schools that you mentioned, it might just all line up as an arms race. Let's all find 4 conferences to join and go crazy because that's that. Also, it's another friendly reminder here on June 30th that college football should have a commissioner. All I'm saying is that will make life a lot easier. One centralized person where all the decisions go to at the top. Otherwise, you're going to get chaos as far as NIL is concerned, as far as conference realignment is concerned, as far as the different rules and regulations of the game is concerned. All that, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be chaotic. I know a lot of college football fans who love that, but that's what you're going to get when you don't have someone at the top. So really exciting news, if you ask me. I am really looking forward to traveling out west, traveling to other aspects of the country here, depending on what happens down the road, to see all these historic venues in the NCAA. And here's the deal, folks. If you thought this was a lot, ESPN's Adam Rittenberg reported that his source at Notre Dame says that they're starting to feel that it's unsustainable to be an independent.
I mean, that tells me they're already joining. That tells me if that's the news, they're already in talks, right?
They were stuck in independent land forever.
Yes, and so much to the alliance. The alliance was formed, and then we took the literally 2 best people from the other alliances squad, right?
Ridiculous.
It's like playing a video game, and you like a stack of cards, and you're like, okay, guys, we're gonna work together, and then you're like, reverse Uno, I'm taking your 2 best cards. So much for the alliance.
You can't trust anyone. You can't believe in anything. I'm leaning into it. Let's go. Whoever wants to join the Big Ten, let's go. Bring your academics and athletics to this conference. Let's line them up. Let's have a good time. And maybe one day we'll get rid of Kevin Warren as the commissioner of this league and find someone who actually knows what they're doing.
Possibly.
But anyway, we'll keep an eye out for this entire Big Ten story as it develops. Can't wait to see what happens with which teams get added now. Can't wait to see which schedules change and what happens to divisions and what happens to any kind of non-conference schedule. I don't know.
We already know Indiana's getting into a football division with USC, Ohio State, Michigan State. They're going to move Iowa over. They're going to put Wisconsin in there.
Don't forget Penn State. We're going to have Penn State in ours too.
Yeah. And who
else?
Else?
Notre Dame. If Notre Dame.
Oh, and Notre Dame. Yeah, Notre Dame. And then Clemson.
Clemson too. Yeah, exactly.
Indiana's the one basketball school with the division.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how it has to be. And those are just the rules. Right? We know how it works. Anyway, look, it's really, really cool to see these kind of things happen. I can't wait to see how this develops over the course of the next few months. I'm sure over even the next couple of years. But it's time. It's time to dive into the 4 powerhouse matchups on the Indiana basketball schedule, including the 2 that were announced since our most recent podcast episode. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But first, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. And how about we give a tip of our cap to IU football's recruiting here over the last week or so? A couple of 2023 prospects committed to play football at IU for Tom Allen. 3-star corner Trayvon West out of South Carolina said yes to the Hoosiers. He also held offers from Kansas State, Memphis, West Virginia, and Wake Forest. Can't wait to see him come in and continue that tradition of strong corner play here that we've seen recently with Tom Allen leading the way, as well as safety Amari Farrell, who committed from the state of, shocker, Florida, as Farrell committed to Indiana recently as a 3-star safety. He also held offers from schools like Arizona, Florida State, Cincinnati, Kentucky, Louisville, and Miami, Florida, among other schools. So again, Brandon Shelby, Jason Jones working in tandem here as secondaries coaches, really doing a great job at recruiting the South. Tom Allen has established his footprint there, especially in the state of Florida. Shout out Trayvon West. Shout out Amari Farrell. We're going to have a lot more here as we head into camp season and the start of the regular season. Again, IU football opens with the conference opponent. Illinois comes to town that opening Friday night. Can't wait to see the Hoosiers get off to a good start this year, a softer start to their schedule compared to last season. Really looking forward to a 3-0 Indiana football team after the first few weeks of the season. If you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound. That's the Hoosier Sound, wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound. I saw we upticked our follower amount by a few dozen or so over the last couple of weeks, in the mid 6,400s or 6,500s here. Join the family if you haven't yet. We're your one-stop shop for IU sports. And of course, on this podcast, we're at the Hoosier Sound. You can give us a follow here. We'll keep you up to date with everything you need to know as well. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. That kind of support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. Matt, we finally got the news we were looking for. Probable preseason number 1, North Carolina is going to come to Bloomington for the ACC Big Ten Challenge. How exciting to hear that news. It's going to be on Wednesday, November 30th. We also heard over the last few days, according to John Rothstein, that in the Gavitt games, Indiana will take a trip to the Cintas Center in Cincinnati to take on Xavier. What an interesting matchup there. There is no date, time, or TV confirmed for that yet. However, if you pay attention to previous season schedules, this Gavitt games matchup will actually be the first of the 4 big-time non-conference games Indiana plays, assuming the Gavitt games takes place in the mid-November timeframe that we normally see.
Right.
Matt, North Carolina. Let's get into it. Coming off a runner-up finish last season nationally. Of course, Indiana will also face the national champion Kansas. Arguably, North Carolina and Indiana, the top 2 front courts in college basketball. Trace Jackson Davis and Armando Bacot made this happen. How excited are you to see Indiana and North Carolina at Assembly Hall?
I'm extremely excited. I was there at the last IU UNC game, and that atmosphere was incredible. The team sucked second half of the season, but legitimately, I thought we were going to be looking at a possible national title winning team after beating UNC the way we did at home that game. So let's hopefully not have a repeat of that assumption. Or let's have a repeat of the assumption and fulfill it this time. Look, UNC's a great matchup. I think it's going to be very hard for us to beat them. I think it would be funny, though, to show Caleb Love, to beat Caleb Love and RJ Davis after they, kind of snubbed IU and went to UNC instead of going to IU and then beating them 3 years later, or however many years it is now. It would be kind of funny, but it's going to be a good matchup. I am very worried about the Xavier matchup, though. Because Xavier is an interesting storyline. A couple reasons, right? First reason is that they're a local team, right?
Yep.
Speaking of Big Ten realignment,
Oh, yeah.
are they a team that possibly gets looked at for bringing in for basketball, right? They're in the Big East. Also, they have a brand new, shiny head coach, right? They also have
shiny.
Not
I would
shiny.
just say, Sean Miller,
But
been
Xavier-
around for a while.
Yeah, he's not shiny. He's got a couple specks of dust on him. But
a little
now
tread on his tires. Yeah.
but now Sean Miller gets to, kind of get revenge for his brother. And then you add in, I believe, check me if I'm wrong, Jerome Hunter's still in that team.
Oh yeah, he definitely
Correct?
is. That's
So
true.
we'll be playing Jerome Hunter as well. So there's a lot of storylines with that game. Oh, and also Xavier is one of the toughest places to play in college basketball, low key.
Really?
I don't think I have to explain it to you guys because most Indiana fans know a lot about college basketball. But if you don't, and you're listening to this podcast, one, thank you. Two, Xavier and Cincinnati have two of the craziest home court advantages in college basketball. Their fans are insane. And so, I'm not going to be the one complaining about home court, going away, because in the Big Ten you play at some of the craziest environments. Michigan State. Well, I was going to say Michigan, but they're a bit of a sleeper crowd. Michigan State, Iowa's kind of crazy sometimes. You've got the Barn, Rutgers. You can just name a few.
Yeah.
Purdue.
Yeah.
Got some crazy environments in there that you play at, but I think for an early season test away from home, Xavier is a very hard matchup for us.
Totally.
But now you look at our non-conference schedule. You have Arizona, you've got in Vegas, but still not confirmed, but all but confirmed. It's confirmed basically.
It's we'll say, let's just so people don't yell at us. Let's say all but confirmed.
Yeah, we play Sean Miller and Sean Miller's old school. So we play Xavier, Arizona. We play UNC
and Kansas. Yeah.
And Kansas. Jesus.
Well, and I was gonna say this for the end, but let's just say it right now. It's incredible, seriously incredible, to see how far this team has come, its IU program has come, since halftime of that crazy Thursday early afternoon Big Ten tournament game against Michigan.
Yeah.
If Indiana loses that game, I mean, this is just one man's opinion here. I don't think Trace Jackson Davis returns. I don't think Malik Renaud commits. I don't think Indiana and the NIT would look all that great. And the general sentiment in the fan base would be very frustrated once again. But they won. They came back against the Wolverines and they beat Illinois, had a great showing against Iowa in the semifinal contest, won an NCAA tournament game against Wyoming. And this positivity, that energy, they've carried it through the offseason, so much so to where Tommy Lloyd at Arizona and Bill Self at Kansas said, we feel it's best for both schools to put Indiana on their schedule in the non-conference. Now, you were always going to face an ACC team. You were always going to face a Big East team. But that kind of boost in reputation and prestige and in confidence and in energy is exactly what this program had lacked for the last 10, 15 years. I mean, you didn't really see that consistently. Now, of course, it's only been 1 year for Mike Woodson. We'll see what happens here down the road. But having a non-conference schedule like this, that's what's getting IU fans to lick their chops right now. And I think these environments are going to be amazing, from Cincinnati to Bloomington to Lawrence, Kansas, to Vegas for the Arizona game. It's going to be absolutely spectacular. Couple fun facts for both of the matchups that were recently announced. With North Carolina, Mike Woodson and Hubert Davis are 2 of 7 ex-NBA players coaching currently at their alma mater. And also, how about this note? Pete Nance, who in the offseason transferred from Northwestern to North Carolina, was a roommate at Northwestern with IU's Miller Kopp. So what a fun little, what a fun little reunion that will be for the Hoosiers and the Tar Heels in that game.
I'm sure that won't be talked about 4 times on that game in the broadcast. I'm sure they won't bring that up 4 times.
Yeah, ESPN doesn't do that, right? It's like if Tyra Buss and Brad Davison were in the crowd, it's not like they would make anything out of that sort of thing. Not at all.
Of course not.
All I know is between the Nance Kopp reunion with IU and North Carolina, as well as the Indiana Jerome Hunter reunion with IU Xavier, the Sean Miller, Archie Miller, Indiana Xavier type storyline. That's going to be fun to track going into that Xavier matchup in mid-November, assuming that's when it happens. In fact, I believe Sean Miller made a comment on the Field of 68 podcast in the build up to March Madness, or the early part of March Madness, that something like when Indiana trails 2-0 in a ball game, they start booing the head coach and stuff like that. So Sean Miller, he didn't really pull any punches when talking about the IU fan base. Now, he's going to be hosting this game against the Hoosiers, but you better believe some Indiana fans will travel over to Cincinnati and catch that one. So really excited to see how this all plays out. By the way, Xavier did win the NIT this past year, but they did so after firing their coach, Travis Steele, who just missed as far as making the NCAA tournament there. Indiana's 4-1 all time against Xavier, so I'm really looking forward to that matchup. We had a podcast poll question. Which one of these games are you most excited for? We're going to answer that in just a moment. But first, it's time for a social media shout out. And hey, NBA free agency kicked off earlier this evening at 6 p.m. Eastern. And we saw former Hoosier Victor Oladipo decide he's going to reportedly stay with the Miami Heat for a 1-year, $11 million deal, according to Shams Charania, who reported that one. Oladipo and the Heat just seem to be a good fit. Matt, I know you're a Heat fan. I've got to think you love seeing Victor Oladipo staying with the Miami Heat.
Yeah, we didn't get to really see much of him this year in the Heat uniform because he was injured. He only played 8 games. But when he did play in the playoffs, he actually was a game changer. So I'm super excited to see Vic back. I got to get a jersey. Let's see what else. It'd be interesting to see if he comes back. Are we keeping him? Because I've seen reports that the Heat are trying to trade for like 12 different people. So we'll see if he's on the team, if Tyler Hero's on the team, who's going to be left standing after this crazy NBA offseason. It's nice for now to have Oladipo on the books for now.
Yeah, on the books for now. I mean, no matter what, Victor Oladipo's going to get his $11 million. Although I do like that fit there, as I mentioned before, with Oladipo and the Heat. Yeah, as I mentioned right off the top, Kevin Durant requested out of Brooklyn. Miami is understandably one of the top candidates that could make that trade for KD. So can't wait to see how that plays out. Also interesting, OG Anunoby's name has surfaced, I should say, in some rumors. We'll see how that goes for the former Hoosier, who really established himself in the NBA with a strong defensive reputation, a good perimeter shooter, really established himself well with the Toronto Raptors. We'll see where he ends up here during this offseason. Of course, I know Hoosier fans will support him no matter where he goes. Again, with OG, just an unbelievable story from when his college recruitment took place. Folks, real quick, if you want to, once again, follow us or find us on social media, head over to Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's where you can find us. Like our stuff, comment, subscribe to our content. We love to have you. Matt, on Instagram, though, we're not Indiana HQ. What are we?
Indiana.HQ.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate it. That's right. Indiana.HQ on Instagram. And that's where you can find us there. I talked about Twitter though, Matt. And before I give what the fan base has in their minds right now, I'll just throw it out to you. We'll go in chronological order here. The first game is at Xavier, reportedly, allegedly, assuming it goes the same way it's gone in previous years. The second game is going to be home against North Carolina. The third game in the gauntlet is going to be the neutral site game against Arizona. And then the final one will be the road trip to Kansas. Of those four, which one are you looking forward to the most?
Probably the Kansas game. One of the best, home court advantages, one of the best traditions in all of college basketball. Like us, is Kansas. Arizona is a close second. That the other two games are not that, not that shabby, but it's always good to get on national television at a neutral court game, and then the away game at Kansas is going to be fantastic. I mean, they're defending national champions, so
it's going to be absolutely spectacular. By the way, I just want to point out there's no reason, if you ask me, for Indiana to add too much more muscle to this non-conference schedule. I think it's perfectly fine to where it's at. These four games will provide a solid measuring stick for this program, for Mike Woodson, for the assistant coaches. Get fat, with some easier wins the rest of the way, because no matter what, even as much as I dislike the overall strength of the Big Ten, it is tough, generally speaking, to win in this conference. If you ask me though, Matt, I'm looking most forward to that first matchup, the road game against Xavier. And Xavier is not going to be a top 10 team or whatever. They're 20th in John Rossi's top 45. They're just outside of ESPN and CBS Sports current top 25s. But it's a road game against a famous or infamous coach with a bit of a local flavor to it. And it's the first one. You really will get some more clarity as far as how good this Indiana basketball team is. How's Jalen Hood-Schifino going to handle a player like Colby Jones on Xavier, his long, rangy defensive guard? How are Trace Jackson Davis and Race Thompson? Hey, how about even Malik Reneau? How are they going to handle former Iowa big man Jack Nungy inside, or Zach Freemantle, who can hit a variety of shots, a solid veteran player with that Xavier team? Indiana may not even be favored in that first game. And if they are, it's not going to be by that much. It's going to be a hostile environment. It's going to be the Hoosiers' chance to entrench themselves in the top 25. And if you win that one, now you really start building some steam, because I've been sick and tired over the course of the head coaching tenures that I've seen at Indiana, which really started with Tom Crean, and I really started focusing and paying attention on this basketball program. A lot of seasons, Indiana goes way too long before playing their first legitimate road game. Sometimes it even happens in Big Ten play. And I'm saying, get an answer quickly. Get that first true road game under your belt. It doesn't have to be at number one. Get it under your belt. The Gavitt games have helped that for the Hoosiers here. I know they had to play at Seton Hall. I know they've had to play, a couple of other tough road games early on. But by and large, get that first road game out of the way. That's why I'm looking forward to Xavier. I know it's not that popular, but it's the first one. You got to get one under your belt.
Yeah, I think honestly, if we win two of those games, I'm ecstatic. I really am. Start the season between Xavier, Arizona, Kansas, North Carolina. If we can win two of those games, I think we're in a really good spot.
I think you're right.
Two of them are away. One of them is in a neutral, and one of them is at home, right? If we can win one of the national championship finalists from last year's games, it's probably going to be the UNC home game. If it is going to be anything, I don't think we win at Kansas, but it could be at Kansas. And then we win Xavier, or one of Xavier and Arizona. Like, you're looking at a very high ranking, even with 2 losses, because this is a very, very tough schedule. And then give me a bunch of cupcakes for the rest of the schedule.
And
I saw somebody being like, we're scheduling a team that was in Ken Palm 330 or something like that. It's like, one, it's so early in the season, they could be competing for the top of their conference for all we know. 2, like, we're playing all of those 4 games already. Like, what do you want? What do you want?
And Indiana's already trending in that direction. They've already reportedly scheduled through Jeff Goodman games against Miami, Ohio, Arkansas, Little Rock, Jackson State. So, Kennesaw State's on there too. So, Indiana hasn't officially released their non-conference schedule yet, but you can see that they are filling it out with games against very beatable teams to wrap things up. So, very much excited to see how Indiana holds themselves in these 4 big games. It is a far, far, far cry from what IU had last year, which was road Syracuse, home St. John's, and neutral Notre Dame. I'm really excited to see what this November and December have in store. In our podcast poll, the vast majority of you said you were most excited for North Carolina's trip to Bloomington. 68% of you said North Carolina visiting Assembly Hall was the game you were most excited for. You can't blame that many of you, especially if you have tickets to that contest, going as a student or as an alum or whatever. Of course, with that game being at Assembly Hall, understandable how it would carry a little bit more weight for Hoosier Nation in the podcast poll. So 68% of you said UNC. To wrap out the other options, 23.5% agreed with you, Matt, saying that road game against the Kansas Jayhawks was their game they're looking forward to the most. 6.2% of the neutral site game against Arizona. And then only 2.5% of people said the Xavier Musketeers in Cincinnati. That's the one I picked. Can't wait to see how all of these 4 matchups help Indiana build towards March Madness next season. Matt, a lot to digest from this podcast here. Absolutely. As we wrap up on this Thursday night. Conferences are up in the air. Indiana basketball scheduling some heavyweights in the non-conference. What are your final thoughts here on the final day of June?
Conference craziness is crazy. There we go. There's the 3 C's. Conference craziness is crazy. I would obviously, I think next 48 to 72 hours, I have a feeling that the USC UCLA news will not be the only news that breaks on the conference front. Again, I don't have a source on that. That's just a feeling with everything that's currently coming out. With people saying, schools are now kind of looking at this, it's going to be a mad scramble for Pac-12 schools. And I think some ACC schools as well, who are recognizing that they have taken an L on the conference on the alliance. So, and their conference. So like, we're going to be looking for that. And then, obviously NBA news coming up. It's crazy. We're not an NBA podcast, but you can't run from it. You can't hide from it. The NBA finds its way into your life at all times. You see Miles Bridges with the all-time dumbest. Well, first off, if you're any sexual assault allegations are awful, right?
Domestic
Awful,
violence,
terrible, domestic violence. Yeah. It's atrocious, abysmal, like degenerate human behavior, right? But to do it before you get the major contract of like the day before you do get the biggest contract, like game-changing, family-changing, generational money. Yeah. You have to be the dumbest person on planet Earth. So, shout out Miles Bridges.
Yeah. Official idiot sponsored by the Hoosier Sound. Absolutely.
Yes, true. Our idiot of the week segment.
Well, Maybe that needs to be a thing, Matt.
of the year.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, look, Indiana basketball is where it is beyond where I expected them to be in Mike Woodson's first full off season. Right? Like, I know it's difficult sometimes for Hoosier Nation to accept that like things are sometimes better than they actually are. Right now, Mike Woodson, his first offseason is exceeding my expectations based on what I thought the program, the status of the program would be when he was hired a little bit over a year ago, about 15 months ago. So shout out to Mike Woodson, shout out to the staff. They're getting quality programs to schedule them in the non-conference. Yep. Because of IU's success, they're also getting spotlight games in pre-slated cross-conference matchups, right? You knew you were going to face an ACC team, but it's North Carolina that's coming to Assembly Hall, not Pitt, right? And so where Mike Woodson is after, again, a year and about 3.5 months, exceeding my expectations. How long will that last? Who knows? But the fan base is excited. I can see it on social media, on Indiana HQ, on the Hoosier Sound. I can see it when talking to people and coming across people that follow Indiana University. There's a clear level of excitement right now around the men's basketball program, and I can't wait to see how it all plays out. But that about wraps it up for our 255th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love. Go Hoosiers.